There was a girl in school who said to me, I have something you can't do. And I said, that's impossible. And she brought me to a yoga class.
If you're going to discover the meaning of life, there's only two ways to do it. One is you look at the animals.
One of my greatest teachers of breathing was a tiger.
The first thing we're taught is that we must be like the snake, and the snake sheds its skin 6 times a year, getting rid of pests and parasites.
So stop being stupid.
Yes.
And start doing things that feed your luminosity.
Authenticity in spirituality can be gauged by our conduct in everyday life, says my guest. My guests today are quite the power couple in the world of yoga. To learn from them means to dive into a transformational treasure chest. Ana Forrest has been transforming people's lives for over 46 years with her powerful system of yoga called Forrest Yoga. Anna crafted Forrest Yoga while working through healing from her own life's traumas, abuse, helplessness around addictions, chronic injuries, and illnesses. Anna's system of yoga is a healing, strengthening, and spiritually connecting blend of Eastern wisdom and profound ceremony of the Native American and Aboriginal heritage. And that's where her husband and business partner comes into it. He brings his long history of shamanism, the arts, music, and healing to Forrest Yoga. Jose Calarco is also the director of the legendary Australian Indigenous company called Descendants Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Dance. Descendants won the UNESCO United Nations competition as the world's best Indigenous live show. Jose creates and teaches ceremonies, tells creation stories from the traditions of the first peoples of Australia and other shamanic traditions, and weaves these into the Forrest Yoga practice. As well as being a pioneering yoga teacher, Ana is a mystic, visionary, philanthropist, and author of Fierce Medicine. She's the quintessential medicine woman. In this conversation, I'm looking forward to finding out all I can about how yoga and the ancient tradition of ceremony are a powerful medium for healing, overcoming addictions, and ultimately lead us to our wholesome self. Welcome, Ana and Jose. I'm so happy to have you here again. We've done this interview once before. It's already 7 years. Can't believe it's 7 years.
It's so good to be here with you. It's like we get to start a whole nother cycle. We have many wonderful things to go into, and it's just like, yeah, let's rock.
Absolutely.
And the world has changed since the last interview, since 2020. So, yeah, I think we've got a lot of interesting things to say.
So much change, so much change. I want to begin, though, by asking you guys, can you say, I will do an introduction for you, obviously, introducing the audience to who you are and so on, but can you introduce yourself? How would you introduce yourself?
Ana? Ladies before gentlemen.
Okay. As a teacher, I see myself more as a world teacher and as a medicine woman, and yoga is part of my tools to use. But for me, the yoga is a sacred arena to vision quest for healing, to vision quest for purpose, as well as to build your self-esteem because you take responsibility for your own health and for connecting to your own spirit, and then work it out on the mat and work it out in the ceremonies that we have that are embedded into our different courses and retreats and workshops. So we are providing a sacred arena to discover yourself for healing, but also to build yourself into the person you most deeply want to evolve into. And I think it's super important to actually grab a hold of how you want to evolve and take responsibility for building that, instead of just like, okay, get up, go to work, come back, relax, go to bed, get up, go to work, pay bills. Okay, paying bills is good, but we're here for more than that. We're here for a lot more than that. And part of my intent when I teach, you were talking about freedom. I want to help people bring freedom into their body so they're not imprisoned in this, and they learn how to embody spirit and then live that. And it's radically different than the usual fear encapsulations that so many of our people live inside of.
Anna, you are one of the very few people that addresses the body, and I want to talk more about that a little bit later on, because most people, when they talk about healing, trauma, and transformation, it's a very psychological thing. They don't get to the granular level, the cellular level, the physical level.
It's in the cells.
And here's the thing. until you can get to that, you don't truly transform anything. You just change something. You change your perspective and so on. I'd like to talk about that in a little bit. Let me ask Jose, how would you introduce yourself, Jose?
Well, when I hear the term yoga teacher, for me, it's really just a yoga teacher. It's such a limiting perspective on who I really am. I see myself as a spiritual detective, finding out the great enigmas and meanings to life. And once I came into the yoga world, I bought in all these ancient traditions and philosophies. And I think I could say I'm a shaman, a vegan, a musician, a healer, a psychic, a clairvoyant.
Producer,
How much
composer,
self-promotion
singer.
Do you want?
Exactly.
No,
you're very multifaceted.
It is, and so was Anna. So when people call us yoga teachers, it's sort of like, is that all?
That's a little bit of what we are.
Yeah,
but an important bit, but
I
a
know.
little.
This is the thing, isn't it? So I have the same thing. People say, what do you do? I mean, where would you like me to begin? It's the same kind of thing. It's like that diamond. I always talk about diamond as an analogy because the diamond has so many facets. And the whole idea, what I call the inner diamond, is unleashing the pure spirit within, that brilliant, the brilliant spirit that reflects and refracts its light through these various labels that we give ourselves, the things that we do in the world and how we show up. So that, for me, it works really well for both of you, is that you've got that brilliant diamond that's refracting out your light in so many different ways. And so, I've been practicing forest yoga now for at least the last 15 years, Anna. And, as you know, I was talking about various teachers that I've practiced with before. And I continue to do that. But your practice is one of those really deep, delicious, intense practices. It's a very granular practice. At the same time, it's designed to connect you with your true essence, what you would call spirit, what I would call Atman in the Vedic terminology. The spark, that consciousness beyond the mind, the body, the emotions, the feelings, and everything else that conditions us in a limiting material world. I'd like you, Anna, to start with telling us about where you started your journey. I've read your book, Fierce Medicine. I have the story. We've talked about the story in a previous podcast. But I'd really love to know, what is it that brought you to yoga in terms of your initial background?
That's actually a very much of a two-pronged question. So it's like on the small paradigm, there was a girl in school who said to me, I have something you can't do. And I looked at her, and I was training horses at the time, and I was a very tough kid. Smoked cigarettes, alcoholic, very tough kid. And she was a very quiet, kind of short, little overweight, pale, gentle creature. I didn't even know this girl. And I just kind of looked at her, and I took out a cigarette, and I tapped it down, lit it, in my best, like, James Dean kind of form. And I said, that's impossible. And she brought me to a yoga class, but she was right. I couldn't do any of it. I was very stiff. I couldn't sit comfortably. I couldn't lay down. So, like, at the end, the most difficult posture for me was Shavasana. It's like, you want me to lay down with a bunch of other people? Are you kidding? The whole thing was very complicated for me. And I saw people that I considered old bags that had to be at least 30 years old. And they could reach forward and grab their toes, like in a forward bend. Or they could reach back, like in a bow, and grab their ankles. And it was just like unreachable territory for me. It was mysterious. Because as a person that rode horses for many, many, many hours a day,
you were stiff.
I was very stiff. Strong in some ways.
Yeah.
Very stiff and incredibly weak in other ways. And my strength and my weakness were in a constant war. But then there was also the whole wars going on inside that was adding to my cellular dysfunction.
How old were you?
When I started yoga,
when this situation with the girl happened.
That was in my only year of high school, I think. It was around 1973, 74.
But before that, you had a whole range of life, like you had this whole life.
Yes.
I know you talk about how Forest Yoga came to be. You've talked about your abuse, talked about your addictive behaviors. You've talked about injury and trauma. Can you say something about what that was all about?
What that was all about? No, because that would take a long time to even paw through all that.
Would that begin in the childhood?
Yes,
Very young?
very, very
Okay.
young. And starting out with, I was born crippled, very sick kid. Didn't have good strength in my legs. Had trouble walking. Had a lot of head injuries from being hit, and had a lot of problems. And there's sexual abuse in there, and just very hard beginnings. And I would say that one of the gifts that I began to receive from the horses was learning to care about something, to care about another being. In my own very twisted way, I first learned how to love through the horses, to love them, not people, the horses. And so they taught me a lot, including how to stand up for myself, because when 1,500 pounds meets a 120-pound child, it's like something's got to give. So I learned how to be able to take a stance against a horse being irritable or angry or unwilling to do what I said. And they were great teachers, but also the first beings that touched my heart in a amazing way, an almost indescribable way, my relationship with the animal world. But it really began intensely with the horses. And though I had a relationship with birds and cats and snakes and dogs, but the horses broke my heart open. In, going back to meeting this young woman, teenager in school, giving me this dare, it was also, I see it as a sacred intervention, because I was heading in a pretty destructive way. Even though I was working with the horses and training horses at a very young age, I was also on a suicide route. So it was destruction. And so by, if Robin, this is the young woman, said to me, "Oh, I have something that will help you feel better and it'll help you stop smoking," and it would just be like, go away. But because she put it out as a challenge, which was such an odd thing to do, she wasn't a friend, she was just someone. And
she was a friend.
Well, in a very sacred way. And the sacred ones did this intervention, having her lay out a challenge.
By sacred ones, you mean guides, spirit guides, spiritual, like...
The ones that walk in the great mystery and help create...
Invisible helpers.
Invisible helpers
the
is
invisible
a good way
helpers.
to put it,
Yeah.
It's the languaging of the whole thing that can turn people on or turn people off. And I find it's really important that we have a lovely way of speaking about it. Some people call them angels, some people call them soul friends, some people call them something else. But I like that. I like how you just said it, invisible helpers.
Yeah, invisible helpers. In our culture in Australia, we've been around 60,000 years. So this is way before yoga, way before philosophy, way before organized religion. And we always called on the ancestors in ceremonies, the invisible helpers, to come in and help us. And they came to us in dreams, in the dream time, and helped us to make fire, find water, learn how to navigate the stars, the first astrology. And all this mystery and connection is now coming into Forest Yoga, making it a complete spiritual gathering, not an exercise class. This is now a spiritual gathering.
You've brought together this Vedic culture, you've brought together the Native American ceremony and now Aboriginal ceremony.
Yes.
I'd like to understand, first of all, what exactly is ceremony for people like me who have not really been exposed to, that ceremonial aspect of the native cultures. Can you explain how ceremony works and what is it?
First of all, I must say, Forest Yoga is not a Native American ceremony and it's not an Aboriginal ceremony. It has aspects and philosophies from that, but the ceremony is very much mostly myself and Anna's ceremony.
Okay.
Now, 60,000 years ago, there was, as I said, no religion, no philosophy, no organized cultures, nothing. So the first shamans began putting together the first, let's say, almost like in organized religion, there's a mass, and the mass has a smoking ceremony, some hymns, some readings from the Bible. It has content and structure. So 60,000 years ago, our people in Australia began putting ceremony structurally. There would be smoking ceremonies, like smudging. But the smudging ceremonies, most people in yoga don't understand what the smudging ceremony originally was. They think, oh, it's just clearing bad energy. As a matter of fact, it's not. In the first ceremonies, the smudging was used to get rid of the human scent of fear, uncertainty, jealousy, anger. So to entice the higher, what some people may call angelic forces or spiritual forces, the human scent had to be eradicated. Then we would adorn our bodies with red ochre, yellow ochre, red ochre, the shells, feathers of eagles, and we began the first songs and the first dances. So in a way, it was like a mass or a concert for the tribe, where we invoked the bigger forces of nature. And through song, dance, storytelling, we begun the first philosophy and first inquiry into the enigmas of life. So we bring all this into a 2.5-hour yoga class, and it's no longer just a bunch of physical activity. It is a ceremonial. The physicality is a very important part of the class as well, because when I first came to yoga, it was kind of corny. I started with Bikram and Ashtanga yoga. And what I mean, it was corny. Not so much the yoga was corny, the teachers were corny. And it wasn't very believable for a person who came from
such deep roots.
Yeah, the indigenous background. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful, because I can see that yoga is helping people, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could bring the fundamental stuff of indigenous culture, that there's something true about Native American culture, Maori, Aboriginal culture, something that's believable. And then the New Age movement, there's something that was not right about it. I don't know what it was, but so it was a great blending of this, something that was true and real and sacred, indigenous inquiry, indigenous ceremony coming into the yoga class, because so many of the students were suicidal, needing help, and the physical exercise was not enough. So we brought in prayer, smoking ceremonies, musical stuff, journeys into the dream time, as you'll see, faith healing, all of it now in Forest Yoga. And you will experience it.
I will. I'm absolutely
this weekend.
So looking forward to that. And I think for me, the interesting thing about it is that I actually don't think, when it comes to something that is deeply profound and transformational, I very rarely choose with my mind. Something always happens in my path that says, do it. In this case, Jose, it was you. Mm-hmm. You said to me, do the workshop with us. And yes, I know it's an obvious thing to say, but you could equally have not said that, because people often don't. They kind of leave you to it and let you choose. But I saw your the advert, because I practice at Indaba Yoga almost every day. And they've been advertising it for so long. I've seen you out there, and I was like, oh, I really want to do that, really want to. But I'm one of the worst people at committing to something by way of a time, unless it's nearer the time. So I'll only do it a few days before or something. It's just how it works for me. And so, you invited me to do it, and and when I was driving in here today, I had this thought, that's not an accident that I'm doing this with you this weekend, because there is something I'm working on in my own life, which I've been very deeply committed to working through, clearing and, transforming. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, of course, this is the weekend. We're going to actually give it a catalyzed, like a injection of all kinds of focus and spirit and techniques and structures and everything that will help to do that. But Anna, you as I mentioned earlier, you bring, your yoga practice. And while all yoga practices, in my view, that I have worked on, whether it's Ashtanga Vinyasa, Mysore, Prana Vinyasa flow, any of these types of things, they are all designed to release bodily traumas. They're all designed to help us through things. But your approach in particular is very physical, actually trauma focused. I would say first chakra focused very often. And we actually, when we did the workshop with you, I did the workshop with you previously, and very often when I do forest yoga classes, we're very much low to the ground so often, and the breath is something that is such a profound anchor in your practice. I want you to talk about how do you work, talk about how you work through trauma through the breath, and what you have learned in teaching and in your own practice as to how does yoga work in releasing trauma?
I have to just speak on forest yoga. So whatever the other systems are and what their intent and whoever that created it, it's like that's not ours. So
Sure.
I can only address what we do.
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of injuries and a lot of different problems, and like epilepsy, thyroid disease, just all sorts of problems in my body, the crippledness that I started out with. Once I finally chose life and then began to investigate, how do I change the way that I'm holding on this cellular way? So it's like it's a cell tissue, it's an emotional, it's a psychological holding, it's a spiritual lack frequently in the area too, that all has to be groomed. And so working with that, so one of the great marriages that I did in forest yoga was I had this conflict. It was like I was working in native ceremony and I was teaching my classes, and they always pulled against each other. I was invited into some beautiful sacred ceremonies and couldn't go because I had this yoga commitment, and it was a conflict for me for a while until I learned how to marry them and bring that aspect of sacredness and intelligent investigation into the practice, and vision questing into the practice. So one of the gifts that come in with that is, after Jose and I clear with the smoke, Jose clears people's fields with the music, then I set an intent. And the intent could be, pick an area in your back that needs healing or release, since so many people have back pain. Or it could be some other thing, like we were working with the brain in the last workshop, which I love doing that. That's so fascinating. But it's like, let's start with your back pain. A lot of people, it's lower back or up between the shoulder blades. And then in almost every pose, we're questing for how to use the pose and the direction of the breath. Put the breath into there to break up the congestion of the pain and bring in a fresh healing energy, bring in fresh breath, fresh blood. And that's how the body heals, and through movement.
And so you use the breath in a very particular way. I know that, I don't know whether that's still part of your practice, but
Absolutely.
there's like, when I've been in your classes, it's been like oh my goodness, people are literally loudly grunting. And no, but they are. And
Yes,
I don't know
that's
whether
true.
that's, it's a little bit, it's very cathartic, you know, but it's profound. And you can really hear people in their process. Some people are very loud compared to others, and some people are less so, but the clearing is very much a release. So talk about that specifically in terms of the breath that you guide people to use. How do you teach people to use breath in that way?
Well, it goes back to the intent. So let's say that you're working with a low back injury. So we are, as we go through the pranayama, as we go through the poses, we're coaching you to put your breath into the area you chose to work with.
Mm-hmm.
You chose to
Mm-hmm.
work with,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is your problem. And to physically get it there. And people, they get stuck in their mind like, oh, well, my lungs don't go to my lower back. It's like you have breath pathways into every cell in your body. What you're learning today is how to travel that and get your breath there and break up the knots.
Knots, yeah, the stuckness.
The stuckness and the pain and the anguish and the beliefs of it, it's never going to go away, and all the nonsense that we stick into our hurts. We put a lot of stuff and beliefs in there that constrict our healing. So all that starts to break up, and so sometimes when that breaks up, people cry, they grunt, they shudder, they have whatever release they need to. Some people go into high drama, and it's just like, tune it down, baby, and get real. But that's part of it too, is like people are so not knowing how to be real. They hear someone crying over there and they think, oh, I'm supposed to go hysterical now. It's like, no, you're supposed to do what you need to right now. Yeah. So just teaching people how to connect to their authentic self is a radical shift. Because so often we're always trained to present our facade, and who we truly are, we're taught doesn't matter. And that's one of the biggest lies that there is in our life. So focusing in and honoring and cherishing our authentic self, and then exploring, well, what the hell is that? What is that? What does it mean to connect to my own spirit? And this is part of the work that we're doing. Yeah,
and that word authentic self has become part of a cliche, almost a cliche, which is a shame. It's great that it comes into popular culture, but it's a shame that it becomes so cliche that because it's not understood so well. But coming back to the breath, the thing that fascinates me, or rather coming back to the physical manifestation of discomfort or dis-ease, is that, in my kind of understanding, in my awareness, it lives as something that manifests as a last resort, that it comes through the subtle body. The certain thoughts that in Vedic culture we'd call them sanskaras. They're like deep imprints, something that you repeat thinking again and again, doing again and again, that it becomes an encoded aspect of your personality, as it were. But it starts at a very subtle level, in the levels of the koshas, the subtle layers of the body. Not the body, but the subtle layers of our being. And then when it's practiced long enough, then it becomes a thing. And then eventually, if it's not addressed way beforehand, because we know when something is a discomfort before it becomes a disease, it then settles into the body in some shape or form, right? Is that how you see it?
That's pretty close. I would also add that whatever that thing is, it also manifests outward into our life, that kink or that piece of toxicity.
Yes.
But there's this incredible thing. It's like our breath is so powerful, so connected to the Atman, that, well, let me backtrack a little. When we have a thing, a trauma, a fear, a accident, we have a certain breath pattern that forms around that. So when you change your breath, you open up the doors of all sorts of possibilities of change and healing. If you don't change your breath, you don't. You don't. So when you change your breath, your thinking begins to shift. You are more easily able to step out of that habitual way of thinking that keeps you entrapped in your misery. But then also you need to catch what is that little misery wheel that you always jump on. I'm not enough, I'm too much, I'm this, I'm that. I can't succeed, la 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 la, whatever bullshit it is that tortures you all through your life. So you start.
I'm laughing because that's what happens, right? We're so limited.
We're seeing things the way we are, not the way they really are. So, talking about breath.
See, you've got such a good way of putting things. I really love it. We're seeing things the way we are and not the way they really are.
We're always seeing it through
our own layers,
the prism, the lens of our illusion.
Wherever we are.
And with the Aboriginal culture, the first thing we're taught is that we must be like the snake. And the snake sheds its skin 6 times a year, getting rid of pests and parasites. So this is a metaphor for us to get rid of all beliefs and all dogma. So that's the first thing a shaman has to do if they really want to enter the dream time as a real dream walker. So the mind needs to be free and pliable, which means letting go of religious beliefs, political beliefs, beliefs that we got from our parents, media, schools, universities, teachers. So this is one of the first steps. And we were talking before about the breath. We're going a bit further now in Forest Yoga, past the physical body, and now we're looking at the electromagnetic field. And the electromagnetic field or aura contains the physical body, the astral body, the mental body, and the spiritual body.
Exactly.
So we're taking things a lot deeper in yoga now by bringing real shamanism in, not superficial shamanism, where word knowledge is just a mere shadow of real knowledge.
Shamanism is an experiential thing, isn't it?
It is. It has to be done on first-hand experience.
Into communion.
Yeah.
Again, with the sacred.
Yeah.
With the sacred ones.
Yeah.
Because word knowledge is just a shadow of real knowledge. So you have to experience these things. So the electromagnetic field, we work on this now through music. Now, why it's so important to work on the electro field before the physical body? Because the body is encased by the electromagnetic field. Soon as the electromagnetic field has holes or openings, it's a doorway for volatile energy and all types of diseases, other people's feelings, other people's emotions. So we have...
And entities.
Oh, everywhere. The entities are everywhere.
Yeah.
Once people see the dancing dots, and what I call the dancing dots that is the world to come. So the world to come is right here and now. It's interpenetrated in the physical world. And clairvoyants, shamans see it. This room is full of dancing dots. And these dancing dots are the energies and people in the
other side of the veil.
The other side of the veil.
Yeah.
Correct. So Anna and I really work hard now on the electromagnetic field, the physical body, but we also include diet as well. So when I came in as co-director in 2014, I turned Forest Yoga into a vegan-friendly practice. Like most Indian cultures were already vegetarian.
We're vegetarian. I'm brought up vegetarian. My mom won't even have any eggs or anything in the house, although milk and milk products are a central feature because they are so rich in nutrients and so on. Yogurt and stuff. But I've been brought up a vegetarian. I tried to eat when I was a teenager. I did try experiment with McDonald's and stuff, and it was like, what's the big deal about? And I certainly don't want to kill animals. I went through a phase actually when I saw there were 2 things that happened. Once we were in just a slight aside of what we're talking about here. Yeah. We were in Madrid in one of those bull rings, and I went in there. My boyfriend at the time took me there, and I honestly thought that this was just for fun, like it was literally a show. And then I started to see the bull come up with little nicks and little things where there was like red marks, and I said, "But that I thought that must be the way they'd somehow, I don't know, tomato ketchup or something. And then I saw the bull get weaker and weaker and weaker and bleed more. And as that was happening, I was feeling sicker and sicker and sicker. And I literally said to my partner at the time, I'm like, you've got to get me out of here. What is this, Why would you bring me here knowing that, why would I find this entertaining?
Torturing this animal.
Why would I find it entertaining?
Yeah.
And so we went out. And by the time we'd had, because it's such a huge ring, it's the main ring, came out. And by the time that bull or a previous one, I don't know which one it was being hung upside down by its feet. And it was being, skinned. And so all the blood was literally dripping and it smelled. I was literally crying for that. I felt it so much. A few months later, we went to Bali. And, we had this little fisherman take us out. He just happened to be someone who we'd met and so on. He had a little boat and he said, oh, come with us, come with me, on a sunset cruise kind of thing. So we didn't know that he was going to get his fishing net out. I actually didn't even know he was a fisherman, to be honest. But we just met the guy. And anyway, so we ended up in his boat. He gets his fishing net out, chucks it in the sea, gets the net filled with, what turned out to be shrimp. And then he literally takes it and he chucks it into his boat and it lands at my feet. And I could literally see the tiny, tiny little shrimp frothing, like bleeding at their mouths. And again, another. So that happened in a very short space of time. And it was at that moment when I said, even if I occasionally want to have a burger or something, there's just no way I'm ever going to eat that kind of stuff again. And that was many, many years. So I was brought up vegetarian and I'm still vegetarian. I'm not going to become a vegan because it, for me, feels, for my DNA, it feels good to be, where I am. Maybe one day, I don't know. But anyway, the point being that this lack of compassion for what we're consuming and where that came from.
Yes. Energetically as well. Oh.
The fear. Yeah. The fear and the hormones and all the chemicals aside, but the simple fear of those beings, the little animals that were killed, knowing that they're dying and had a horrible death. For me, I feel it.
Yoga and vegetarianism was always one. And Krishnamacharya, the godfather of all yoga, said the first yoga is food.
Yes.
Not the physical practice. No. The first yoga is food. And Ramana Maharishi, Krishnamurti, all the great Indian teachers tell us the same thing. To take in the suffering of animals is bad for the soul.
Karma.
You're taking in that suffering.
Yeah.
So Anna and I are animal lovers, and this is one of the very reasons that we turned forest yoga into a vegan/vegetarian yoga system.
When we got together and I went from being a hunter to vegan, that was a very strange shift. It was probably a year later that I started having this very strange thing happening, which was I could see like this black coal dust coming out of me. And it was utterly repulsive.
And fear, right?
Well, what I realized what it was like the anguish and the suffering coming out of me, the animal suffering coming out of me, and also my own suffering coming out of me, and recognizing that I had to make different choices now. So it's like it peeled off some layers of delusion off my own eyes, which was, a little shocking. And recognizing that I had to make different decisions where I don't perpetuate my own suffering, even at the subtler levels, that I was still doing it, even as a person wanting to walk the Wisdom Keeper road. So that was a big piece of me becoming wiser, was stripping away this another layer of lies and stopping this internal hypocrisy of I love animals and I'm killing them and eating them. What the
It's like eating your own pet dog, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
You know?
But this black coal dust that Anna is talking about, this is what shamans speak of as well. There's one famous Native American shaman. Is it
Rolling Thunder
Grizzly?
you're talking? Oh,
No,
Grizzly Bear Lake.
Grizzly Bear Lake. He's a classic. Whenever humans eat a violated animal, they take in the death and suffering of that animal. And then when we do start not eating all this death and destruction, then this black coal dust, which is only seen by psychics and clairvoyants, starts leaving our body. So he speaks of it in his book, this black energy leaving our body.
It's karma. I mean, I see that, you're taking on so much karma, that those animals have suffered. I don't want to say too much. I also want to leave people the choice to arrive at their own consciousness, at a level of consciousness for themselves. But it's really nice to know that you've incorporated that into forest yoga.
Totally.
I want to backtrack a little bit. So when Jose was talking about snake, in the native medicine ways, we see snake as oldest healer. And in the indigenous ways, animals are our teachers.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that snake has a great lesson for us, Jose was talking about that they shed 6 times a year. It's like we could learn how to do that, but they shed their parasites. How fantastic.
Amazing.
If we
Do they?
chose to shed our parasites every year,
6
right?
times a year.
All the people, all the instances that are leeching off of us, and they consciously shedding that's fantastic. Snakes do this other fantastic thing, is they have a different kind of eye than we do. And so when they shed their eye plates. And I think that is a fantastic metaphor for us. It's like, how about each time that we cleanse, rebirth, renew ourselves, we shed our eye plates so we can perceive more of the truth.
Amazing. Anna, I actually teach Shavasana that way, which is shav means a corpse, as you know, and, Shavasana, that the posture at the very end where we're lying, surrendering into conscious rest, as it were. But to me, it's been revealed that Shavasana is really, practicing for the ultimate letting go that one day that we will do, but practicing it and actually practicing it such that every day when you go to bed, if you come into Shavasana while you're lying on your bed, and when I teach it in my classes, I also teach it like that you're coming into Shavasana, it's conscious rest. And what's happening here is you're going to arise from this some way, in some shape or form, transformed. Because this is a mini death, as it were. We're allowing ourselves to voluntarily let go of everything that's happened up till this moment, just by choice. And, really training ourselves mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, just spiritually even, to kind of surrender. I don't need I don't take with me when I come out of my Shavasana, whether the Shavasana is 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. But I believe that probably whoever put Shavasana into the practice, that probably was the case. So, in fact, going into it with deep gratitude and appreciation for everything that's gone on up till this moment, so that you can, when the moment comes, when you finally let go, as in the Indian culture, we say that the very last thought that you have, the very last words you utter, determines what happens in your life going forward, whether it's reincarnation or wherever. So, one of the things that we're taught is to, make Ram the mantra, Ram, 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 as in a jap. Make that as part of your practice, or Shiva, or whatever it might be, Om Namah Shivaya, and let that become so firmly embedded in your consciousness that you become that the last breath you take, it's so natural for you to actually have that be the last thought, So I'm just talking about when we're talking about shedding skin as a snake, and that whole idea of surrendering and consciously letting go.
Yeah. See, our culture, the Aboriginal culture, is all about the snake. It's all about the Rainbow Serpent.
Kundalini.
So if you Google what's the world's oldest religion, they'll say it's the cosmic rainbow serpent of Aboriginal people. But it's not really a religion at all. It's living with nature and living as a tribe in harmony. And
it's a way of life, right?
Yeah. And when we see the rainbow in the sky, that is the cosmic rainbow serpent, the giver of life and the bringer of water. So we need to be like the snake, flexible, shedding our skin and always changing, getting rid of perceptions that no longer serve us.
And that Kundalini energy is very much tied to that whole serpent energy, and also Caduceus. If you look at the Caduceus, there are so many cultures have this as at the center of their
snake,
their philosophy and why they practice what they practice in order to release that, to uncoil it, to set it free, and somehow, what is it, Anna? To find that great spirit, the true essence of who we are, or to what is the unleashing? What are we unleashing into?
I think there's a lot of different levels depending on where you're heading. You know, like if you're talking to an alcoholic or some other form of addict and you're talking about embodying spirit and all that, it just comes off as horseshit. Because where they're at is they're fighting every minute of the day not to go use their drug or their addiction. So you need to go where they're at.
Right.
You know, like to start to move the numbness out, start to move the anguish out, and give a person tools to deal with the craving, to make it through those 20 minutes of intense cravings, you know, like that. And then you build it from there. So when I first started to vision quest and quest for a purpose in being alive, there's many things that started to come in, but I had to recognize, like, oh, these are some of the answers I'm looking for, or they're pieces of the puzzle. But then as soon as you start to walk the vision, it changes. It grows. It feels differently. You change as you walk the vision, and so it ends up being quite different than your original concept or your original seeing. And it doesn't mean that what you saw originally was incorrect. It was a piece of it. Just like learning how to perceive more and more of the truth. You get pieces of it and you start putting it together. I want to backtrack way back to the breath again. One of my greatest teachers of breathing was a tiger. And I met this tiger at a wildlife rehabilitation center. And you're not supposed to touch the wild animals. And of course, I didn't pay attention to that. And I was petting this tiger and it started to purr. And he had this big gold head like a soup pot that weighed like 1,000 pounds. And as he started to purr and I was scratching under his chin, and he just kept pushing my hand down, and I couldn't even lift his head up, and it was just like squashed into the ground while I was scratching him because he was just reaching into how that felt really good, you know? And I was watching this beautiful cat breathe. And he breathed with his entire rib cage. And I really wanted to be like that cat. This gorgeous, dangerous, relaxed, able to spring up at any second kind of a being. And so I started to match my breathing with what I could see he was doing. So breathing with his whole rib cage.
So I'm just
that was my first pranayama teacher.
Pranayama. I was just going to say that, you know, we have names for different types of pranayama. How about this, naming that full breath, the one that the tiger breath that we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I think it deserves a name. I think your practice, the way you teach breathing to release, deserves a pranayama name.
I'll work on it. I'll think about it.
I really think it does.
I mean, right now the name I'm using is like we use a deep Ujjai breath, and you know, and it doesn't have a name for when it's focused into a specific area or with the intent. Other than whatever that intent is.
And that Ujjai breath is, again, another thing we have in common. I've become a really deep devotee of the Ujjai breath because it is so powerful in so many ways. I know that Ashtanga is taught to Ujjai. Some teachers don't emphasize the breath or the Ujjai breath so much. But for me, it's become it's made itself known to me in a sense. It's kind of come and got me in a sense. And I realized that it's the breath that I think as yoga teachers we need to teach probably the most in some ways, because
Yeah, I
it's
think so.
so profound and so powerful. And, I'm a practitioner of Kriya Yoga, the system of Kriya Yoga. And that is basically, having a mantra, you're basically practicing the mantra up and down the spine, the Kundalini. It's a Kundalini awakening practice. And we practice that to Ujjai. And as I've been practicing Kriya Yoga, it's emerged that the Ujjai has become so strong. I never thought, when I was a beginner, I was in my soul classes and I heard people, practice Ujjai with their yoga practices and stuff. Some people are so consistent and so loud, and I would try that for myself, and my breath was so quiet. And for a tiny little person like me, it's just become super, super strong and loud. I'm fascinated by the Ujjai breath, actually.
This weekend, in one of the classes, maybe a couple of them, we will be introducing a pranayama. That's my all-time favorite is pranayama, which is Brahmari through the chakras.
Yeah. But with musical keys.
Yes, I'm working on that. So
amazing.
when I created Brahmari through the chakras, it was to help me connect to the visceralness of your chakras.
Brahmari through the chakras.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
So each chakra has physical territory. Like seventh chakra, it's top of the skull, top of the brain, pituitary gland. And then there's attributes to that, like discovering and developing your own gifts, discovering and questing for what is your purpose in being alive. So we teach that. And then when I was working with Brahmari through the chakras, it became one of the main keys for unlocking my thyroid disease and clearing it. Let me finish.
Yeah, I know where we're coming with this.
Right. Then when Jose and I first started our courtship, I told him one of my deep secrets, which was about using music and sound to get into an area to bring healing to it. And he looked at me and he said, my people have been singing into the bones for 60,000 years. So I thought I was going into this brand new territory, but I was breaking into a territory.
It was actually quite
You're just
old.
having a past life memory awaken.
Well, that was amazing. And then as we began working together and developing Brahmari through the chakras together, we were giving the chakras their colors. And what I realized in awakening the chakras is we're also awakening this rainbow within us. And I just was so enchanted by that. It's like, this turns on my own rainbow. And I just loved that.
But each chakra had a musical key as well, which Anna was unaware of. So the term itself, Uni-Verse, a lot of people haven't stopped to think about. Everything is music.
Yeah.
Music and vibration is the entire universe. So
Yes.
our people in Australia know this. The word Uni-Verse. Uni means one. Verse means song. So it's just one song threading all creation together.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Just on that song note, didn't mean that to be a... Okay, there you go. So just on that song note, Gita, it actually is not Gita. It's Geet. Geet means song.
Yeah.
Geet.
Bhagavad Gita.
That is...
Geet,
yes.
it's actually not supposed to... Well, so what's happened is since Sanskrit has the A sound at the end of it, but it's not A, it's Gita, Geet. And now in modern language, Hindi, etc., we would call it Geet. In fact, even in Sanskrit, we call it Geet.
Yeah.
But because we've kind of anglicized a lot of... Actually, what it is if you read Sanskrit, you would be able to see exactly how the vowels and the sounds are actually supposed to be, how long they're supposed to go and how short they're supposed to be, and what inflections they're supposed to have, because Sanskrit is very, very specific. There's like the sh, so. Yeah, there's so many different sounds which are noted.
We go through this. We have a ceremony class Saturday afternoon, and I go through how song was created through A, E, I, O, U.
Yeah.
And the indigenous cultures doing all their songs with A, E, I, O, U. If you listen to any indigenous song, it always is heavily structured in the vowels, because the vowels create breath, and they say the vowels are from heaven, and the consonants S, P, T, is pushing breath and leaving us breathless. So any good singing teacher or coach will always get you to round off your singing with A, E, A, O, U. And if you notice with Italian language, it's the singing language. So most operas are written in Italian for that very reason. However, way before the Italians came the indigenous cultures using A, E, I, O, U in the first human songs ever created, because the human voice was the first instrument before banging sticks together, hitting drums. So, yeah, what you're talking about here is something that we touch on in our ceremony class.
So I have a couple of other questions. I mean, I can talk about this all day because, that there's this, I'm a big, passionate fan of language. I have, so I speak 4 probably very, very fluently. And then there are 3 others which I have learned at school, and that if I spent a month in the country, I would be able to be fluent in those. And then Sanskrit has been like the constant, because when I grew up in India, I was fortunate enough to learn Hindi, Gujarati, and they are based on Sanskrit. And the written language is the same as it's actually the same as Hindi. And last 30 years or so, I've really been studying on that, and I find a lot of commonality between modern Indo-European languages. I can actually pick out words, based on Sanskrit. But going back even into what you're talking about, into pre-language, sort of like Aboriginal and native
the first
cultures.
Grunting and first communication.
Yeah.
Language happened about 100,000 years ago.
There's a connection.
Yeah. And the language was very basic, and it was rooted in A, E, I, O, U.
Yeah.
And then when the consonants came in, the S, T, it kind of ruined the language.
Is that why native cultures have similar sounding language? Because
absolutely.
We were in the Pacific Islands recently, Bora Bora, and then before that in Hawaii and stuff. And and there is a common, and they're quite a long way apart. I mean, I've been to Australia, into various parts and stuff, and there seems to be a commonality amongst those cultures in their language.
Yeah, the Hawaiian language has only got 9 or 10 letters or something in it, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
they seem to use it on almost every word.
Yeah, but
These
all the
long
Pacific
names.
Islands seem to be connected with that Hawaiian alphabet.
And you remember that Mayan guide talked about their connection to the Hopi people, and that's so many miles apart, and yet there was ancient trade routes, land and sea, and there was so much trade and language trade and ceremony trade and medicine trades, like learning healing techniques that were spread everywhere.
Didn't they say that the Mayans went to Australia as well? The people
I think so, yes.
were telling us that that's uncanny.
Yeah,
Didn't know
that's a
about
long journey.
Yeah.
2 questions I have, because we could talk all day long. We've already arrived almost at an hour, but actually let's carry on. 2 questions, Anna. In Fierce Medicine, you talk about fear training. What is that?
Learning how to track your fear. And if you can follow it through your cell tissue, through your mental processes, it will take you to the point of origin that needs healing. And whenever you address that, when you go to that place of terror, or you go to that place of deep injury or deep psychosis or whatever it is, then your trials of evolution begin. Because it's at that place that you need to make changes. Like our fairy tales are full of the young the young girl or the young boy or the man or the woman that had to go out and go through all these difficulties and sometimes going into helplessness or being tortured or almost killed to find the treasure. And the treasure sometimes showed up as like, gold or something, but it really had to do with finding the parts of themselves that was so strong, that was such power, and then living with that power. So with fear, when you start to stalk your fear instead of being stalked by it, it changes everything.
Stalk your fear
Stalk your fear.
of being stalked by it. I love that.
And we teach how to do that in the safe arena of the asanas. But we also teach that in death meditation and some of the other ceremonies that we have in our teacher training courses. But we start it, no matter what level somebody's at, we start it because all these issues apply to all humanity.
Yeah. And we use fear as an ally, and it energizes us. Yeah, it works for us.
Yeah. So we'll talk about how you deal with fear through ceremony. I tell you, let me explain where I'm particularly coming from. I once did, a shamanic journey. Let's just leave it at that. And it literally took me to the edge of where I could go. I mean, I have a a lot of stamina, a lot of bandwidth for, I'm not afraid to venture out. And I came into this kind of area of consciousness where my nervous system was going, it was like frazzled, it was like, I can't go any further. I literally went that far, and I went a little bit further, but literally my physical body wasn't able to take me any further into what I would have liked to have gone into.
Because it was scared? You were scared? What?
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you deal with it when you're dealing with when you're inside of a journey?
Yeah.
And you arrive in a place within your consciousness. It's not your consciousness, it's just consciousness. And, it's a completely unknown area.
Yeah. Having what we call a continuity of consciousness, this is how we, the Aboriginal people, discovered the meaning of life. If you're going to discover the meaning of life, there's only two ways to do it. One is you look at the animals. Why we look at the animals is because they are plugged into the system. A seagull has more intelligence than a human. A seagull can fly, it can do anything, it's plugged into the system. So whenever we needed information, Indigenous people, we looked at the animals. We looked at the emu. We looked at the shark. We looked at the crocodile. They'd been around much longer than humans, hundreds of millions of years. And because they are connected to the Great Spirit, we want to know how that connection happens. So to understand the great enigmas, one, we look at the animals, or two, we go into the dream time or a shaman journey. However, what we learned to do was marry the waking consciousness with the subliminal consciousness, just creating that little thread, and that's called the continuity of consciousness. So no matter what you come across, there's always that higher safety, the higher safety net of knowing that whatever you're experiencing, you can walk through that fear because there's the over-self is on that journey. With the ego's the one that's scared. But however, the over-self is there because you have the continuity of consciousness. I don't know if that'll make sense to your listeners, but ring me up if you don't understand.
Ask Jose the question.
I'd like to add something to that. Like when you're talking about being right on that edge, you were, in my opinion, you were at the end of your particular web, like that you hadn't traveled there yet. And
No, that's exactly where I was.
You needed to grow new neurological pathways.
Yes.
And the only way to do that is revisit that edge over and over so you can begin weaving into this whole new mystery.
Right.
So it's like if you want to learn handstand, the only way you can do it is go in that direction. You do down dog on the wall, you do dolphin, you have someone spot you to help you go up into it. You can't just imagine it.
No.
That won't do you much good.
You have to keep going now.
But bit by bit.
Yeah, because you're creating that frame of reference that wasn't there before neurologically, as much as in all the emotionally and in all the other ways as well.
And sometimes you can only bear to be close to that boiling maelstrom of energy for a few moments.
Yeah.
And then you increase your time. You increase your familiarity with it so you don't have so much reactiveness by being close to such a big energy storm. And then you start learning how to absorb it and then learning how to guide it. It's kind of like riding a really wild horse.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't take control, you end up getting bucked off or something. But otherwise, you can go for a really great ride over and over and over and explore new territory and grow yourself.
Beautiful.
When in doubt, look to the animals.
Look to the animals.
Look to the animals.
But you need, to do that, Jose, you need to have a frame of reference for the animals themselves, because some of us are not that connected to animals as you are.
In cities, there is no animals except the crows and pigeons and things
squirrel.
like that. But it all begun like how to hunt, how to fish, how to follow the stars.
Yeah.
It all begun by seeing the innate wisdom of animals that had that psychic sixth sense and were plugged into the great beyond. So that's how our people got their knowledge, through the animals and through the dream time, being able to go into dreams consciously. And that's not so easy, but becoming a spiritual detective is the beginning. Wanting to know why is the beginning of getting the answers.
Beautiful. Wanting to know why is the beginning. Anna, last sort of like closing pieces of wisdom from you. What would you really want anyone who's got this far in the podcast to know with regards to creating massive shifts for themselves, healing perhaps trauma?
So many things. Start deep breathing. Eat clean food. Go as much vegan or vegetarian as possible. Do something that moves your blood every day and start finding out what is your passion each day, whether it's art or walking or swimming or yoga. To care enough to build a passion. And then using that bigger energy to turn it on whatever your problems are so you can solve your addictions or your pain or your hard relationships or whatever it is. And don't give up. Don't give up. What you do need to give up on is your crappy habits. You know, when you have to reach for your chocolate or your beer or your whatever it is.
What's wrong with chocolate, Anna? Leave me something.
Your breath. You reach into the great mystery. You're building relationship with the beauty of the cosmos.
But that is the beauty of the cosmos, the chocolate.
It is for some, so is the beer for others.
It has to be Belgian chocolate. It has to be really top quality chocolate.
You can eat that, I won't.
Okay.
Vegan chocolate.
Vegan.
Dark chocolate.
Yeah.
But
this is the thing with really good quality chocolate is that they use the cacao butter, the butter of the cacao itself, not animal fats.
Oh, no animal fats?
No.
I'm
no
okay with
fats,
that.
no.
I'm okay with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Me too.
I really dislike what it does to people and their behavior. It's like give some chocolate, even like the highest quality chocolate, to a child and watch what it does.
Yeah.
After
child,
it eats it.
Oh, yeah.
Or an adult. So it's like I don't like. To me, that's like that doesn't feel like a good brain connection.
Oh, there's
I don't like
worse
it.
than chocolate. There's a lot worse.
That's true. That's what I was saying.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. You know, I
So-
think we're talking about pharmaceutical
Junk food and
things that we get
pharmaceuticals
addicted
and
to and stuff.
processed foods and things that
And
destroy.
the life patterns that degrade us and make us ashamed to ourselves. That's what you need to quit. And start exploring what things make you proud of yourself.
Right.
It ain't eating chocolate.
Yeah.
It ain't eating pizza. It ain't, it's like some people have this odd thing about, drinking 3 6-packs of beer, like who can drink the most, and that makes them the best person. It's like, that is stupid. So stop being stupid.
Yes.
and start doing things that feed your luminosity.
I love that.
Yes.
That's a good place to end on. Feed your luminosity, everybody. I love that.
You can use it. You can take it.
Beautiful. I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so honored to have you both here. I have many, many more questions for you. For another time, I think we'll have to leave that. There are a few very pertinent questions I think you need to come back and answer. But for now, we will call it a day here. And thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to doing the workshop with you guys tomorrow.
It's going to be amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.